The March 6th CAAB meeting. We have a packed agenda. Thanks to everyone that is joining us. We will get started and Abby, can you take attendance, please?
Yes, I will start with the folks online. Is David Poland present?
Yes,
Great.
I am here.
I see Joyce Cooper online and Melanie Green. And then we also have guests, Ann Hawkins and Beth Landry, as well as Jackie St. Louis, who will be presenting. We have staff members Kayla Williams, Luis Nunez, Janet Snook, and Michael Torres will be joining us shortly. And then in the room, we have Amy Rourke. Yes. And Rob Perkins. And Alicia Topper. Present. Great. And then we also have staff members Rebecca Royce and Abby Malloy facilitating today. Did I miss anyone? Hearing none, I will pass it back to you, Melanie.
Great, thank you so much. First order of business. Do we have quorum today?
Yes. Yes, we do.
Okay, wonderful. So our first order of business is approval of January minutes. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review those.
This is Alicia. I move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the January meeting minutes, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, minutes are approved. Thank you so much. All right, our first presentation is from the YWCA and Beth Landry. Welcome, and looks like she's ready to go. Thank you so much for being here. Turn it over to you.
Good morning. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Beth Landry, she, her pronouns. I'm going to do the presentation for you today. I'm going to try to go fairly quickly through the slides, and it's my understanding that these can be provided to you. And I'll also take notes on any follow-up questions that you have and try to get those responses out to Abby and other DCS staff so that you have additional information as requested. I'll try to take a pause here and there if y'all have any questions. And the bulk of the presentation is going to focus on an overview of services with more information on shelter and our legal advocacy services, along with some of our housing programs as well. Okay, so we'll get started. I'm not going to read everything off the slides. If anyone does want me to do that for any type of accommodation, or if that's helpful, please let me know. Otherwise, I will just kind of skim over the information on highlights. So we have the Safe Choice Domestic Violence Program with YWCA Clark County. We operate 3 kind of large umbrella programs under the Safe Choice hat. That's going to be shelter, housing and hotline, and our community office and outreach. So shelter includes our emergency domestic violence shelter. That is a 14-room facility, so serving 14 households, whether that's singles or family household composition types. And those are non-congregate bedrooms. So the congregate spaces within shelter include common spaces like a media room, a game room for kids, backyard areas, dog runs for pets and service animals, and then kitchen and dining room. Bathrooms are shared bathrooms as well, but each bathroom is a single use only, and they're not shared bathrooms due to the level of basically trauma and abuse that has happened in both bathrooms and bedrooms. That's why people don't share those facilities. So we also have our 24-hour domestic violence hotline. The phone number is included there for the local phone number. We also have a 1-800 number that'll be included on a later slide. The hotline is currently housed out of shelter, but it's primarily run by hotline dedicated staff. And the hotline dedicated staff does a lot of work around our screenings for different programs because our hotline is used as a central intake point for DV survivors. We also have our housing programs. We have a variety of housing programs. Those include transitional housing, rapid rehousing, motel vouchers, things like that. Advocacy offices for the general public are available at our community office. Now, this community office holds those services, including outreach to the general public. Those hours for walk-ins are Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 9 to noon and 1 to 3. We do close on Wednesdays for walk-ins, and we close every day from 12 to noon so that staff are able to take a lunch break. We also offer legal advocacy, legal referrals, support groups, outreach and education, information and referrals. We'll go to the next slide. Here's our contact information. Again, these should be provided to you, so feel free to take this. Next slide. This is a definition of domestic violence. This is from Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, or if you want to swish it, WSCADIV for short. So domestic violence is a pattern of behavior that one person in a relationship uses to gain power and control over the other. Abuse is not caused by anger, mental problems, alcohol, or other drugs or other common excuses. It is caused by one person's belief that they have a right to control their partner. Next slide. This is domestic violence defined through House Bill. So this is a little bit more specific definition. You can see that there's specific types of abuse that are mentioned in this definition. And this also carries that idea that coercive control is key to domestic violence in relation to intimate partner violence, or IPV. You can go to the next slide. This is some brief stats on domestic violence. These are from the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. These stats are available online. You can review these along with several others if you're interested in any population specific or other stats related to domestic violence and sexual assault. So 1 in 15 kids are exposed to DV every year. 90% are witness to violence. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 4 men experience IPV. 72% of all murder-suicides involve intimate partner. 94% of these victims of these murders are female. Victims of IPV lose a total of 8 million days of paid work each year. I'm sharing these because I thought that these are some pretty impactful highlights in relation to the work that you all are doing with homeless crisis response and CAAB. There's many other stats. They're all as frustrating and saddening. And I encourage you to read more if you are not familiar with domestic violence patterns and the impacts that these have on people. And go to the next slide. This is some information about DV and marginalized populations. So here you can see that our information and our services and feedback from our participants have shown these impacts. So identifying additional obstacles. So LGBTQ+, this could include fear of being outed or discrimination, programs designed to support them, so not having friendly or safe spaces, or also facing discrimination from police. Immigrant communities, especially undocumented immigrants, may face language barriers and fear the legal system. Individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing may face significant difficulties when accessing services and may risk losing access to already small community. So isolating from support networks can be a component there. People of color are more likely to be discriminated against by the legal system and maybe less likely to seek judicial action or help from police. And we do see this active in our current system. Racism is very real in our system. And this has a real impact for survivors. Domestic violence is not caused by any of the following. So that includes gender, mental health, survivors' behaviors. These are common myths that people hold as, why people abuse. Domestic violence is a pattern. It is intentional control. And it usually involves manipulation of another partner. It is unhealthy behaviors and a choice that another person is making because that person feels that it is their right to control and harm another person. Certain things may influence the abuse experience, but it is not causing the abuse. Types of abuse can be pretty far, everything from sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical, technology abuse. Especially technology today, we're seeing so many abusers do tracking things with new technology. Tracking methods are very easy to hide amongst belongings or in vehicles, and they're very difficult to find. Social abuse, isolation, financial abuse are all very common as well and can impact a survivor's ability to restore their life or even be successful in their fleeing attempts. Our approaches to working with survivors includes trauma-informed practices or trauma-informed care, survivor, person, and family-centered, strength-based approach or strength-based interviewing, empowerment, and safety planning. There's other things that we also use in our approaches to supporting survivors, and these are some of our fundamental practices. And you'll probably see a lot of similarity between these and some of the best practices within homeless crisis response system contracts. I would encourage everyone to really do some reframing. If you've ever asked yourself, or if you've ever heard someone, why do they stay? Why are they staying with this person who's hurting them? Please do not ask this of survivors. Instead, ask, why does the abuser choose to act violently? Why is this person hurting someone that they claim to love? Why is this person choosing to control another person and control their life? What can I do to offer support to the survivor? If you or another person does ask, why do they stay? You are essentially blaming the survivor for that abuser's harmful action, and you're not holding the abuser accountable for their action. There are many reasons why people stay. For example, some people may stay because they face a choice of entering homelessness, going to the street. If there's no safe shelters, if they can't get into shelter, it's not safe to stay with family and friends because their abuser has told them that they will kill them if they leave, and they will find them wherever they go. It is a choice on whether or not they flee and risk homelessness, possibly with their kids, possibly with themselves with a disability, or staying in that relationship and staying in that home and staying sheltered, but being subjected to that abuse. I can't stress this enough. If you hear this in the community, please take an opportunity to advocate for survivors and encourage the question to be, why is that person abusing? Why is that person not being held accountable by our systems? Why is our system not responding and helping the survivor? I'm going to move into some terminology. This is just more, and you're welcome to read a little bit more about this when you get the PowerPoint slides, but this is some examples of our advocacy model language and our overall advocacy model. This is a little bit more helping to understand how we do the work from our lens. So we use the term survivor, abuser, batterer. We also practice advocacy models that understand people who abuse their partner may establish a pattern of control that occurs 24/7. Every action of the survivor's life is monitored, controlled by the abuser, that the abuser may control or exploit their partner over time. So that analogy of, the frog in the boiling water, if you slowly turn up the heat, frog probably won't jump out. If you, have boiling water from the start, people are much more likely to be like, nope. So sometimes abuse happens very slowly over time, and it's harder to recognize. Abusers may use several tactics, some of which are illegal, most of which are legal. So most of which in the ways that an abuser harms the survivor are legal actions, and very hard currently to hold them accountable to. Abusers may rely on the system of oppression and social inequities to maintain control over their partner. Again, this is maybe if the abuser is a documented citizen, or if the abuser is a person with full hearing abilities. This can be used if their partner does not have those same advantages. This is terminology from the criminal legal system. So these are things that you're going to hear more from the system, less from the advocacy point of view. So victim and perpetrator, and then legal system is designed to address specific incidences and determine if they're legal or illegal, not necessarily to advocate for what the survivor is requesting or what the survivor needs in that moment, but illegal or illegal actions. Evaluates moments and times, not patterns, and ignores biases and sees everyone as agents under the law, regardless of inequities. So some vast differences between our work and system work, and just the importance of advocacy for DV survivors. We're going to move into some of our program overview now that we've gone through some basics. Before I jump into this, does anyone have any initial questions around some of the baseline framework for domestic violence or our service approach?
David's got his hand up.
This is David Poland. Can I speak real quick? I really want to interrupt to say how much I appreciate that you also mentioned the deaf community. It's clear that you are aware of what kind of trauma leads to that. I just want to make a quick thing so everyone here on the board and the public would know an example of this from another state is that an example of why you shouldn't assume all those things that you listed. I knew a person that was late deafened and had trouble seeing and had no escape route. There was nobody that would believe them if they had been told a way to escape. Because they were white and male, they were constantly being told that they were privileged. No one listened to them. They didn't see the signs. I did. And I asked them, are you sure that you're not being exploited? They were being exploited seriously at home, and I didn't even know how bad it was until a pastor intervened. They had to trick the parents to let this person leave, and they were an adult, not a child. This person was assumed because they're big and tall and had lots of muscles that meant they could do whatever they wanted, or maybe they'd be the abuser. That wasn't the case. Their money was being stolen, and they didn't even have a bed to sleep on at home. And like you were saying with technology, because they couldn't see very well, because they also had low vision, their parents were staring behind their back, watching everything they typed to prevent them from escaping or telling anybody anything. They also used religion to say that honor thy father and mother. Don't you dare tell anybody or we will do something to you. They were scared, and they told the pastor that they did have a plan. And the pastor listened as they told him their plan to commit suicide. There was no deaf men's domestic violence agency, but luckily this pastor knew the women's deaf domestic violence network, and they were kind enough to use their money and their resources to help this person escape. And again, they're not a child. They're not LGBT. They weren't alcoholics or drug abusers. Nobody had any mental health history as the parents, I mean. And this can happen to anyone. You can't tell by person's appearance that they're going to be an abuser or victim. And you cannot assume that, well, this person should be big and strong, they should be able to leave. So I greatly appreciate Beth Landry going through all these slides. I can completely, as a person that studies social work at Gallaudet University, attest that everything she said is accurate.
Thank you, David. Okay, we'll move into programs. And feel free if there's questions at the end, you can ask at the end as well. You can also email questions to me. I'll ask Abby or DCS staff to provide my email for any follow-up conversations that y'all would like to have. So our emergency domestic violence shelter does include funding from Clark County DCS. Again, this shelter serves up to 14 households at a time. DV survivors and their families who are fleeing or attempting to flee violence and experience active high lethality safety concerns. So we are a high lethality emergency shelter only. So as you might be familiar with some of the other shelters that are receiving public funding, these shelters are usually prioritizing folks with different types of vulnerability, like chronic homeless, disabilities, inability to care for themselves, things of that sort. While we do prioritize other types of vulnerability that align with that approach, we also prioritize high lethality survivors. So the persons who are most likely to experience an attempt on their life, an attempt on their children's lives, or significant harm to their well-being. That is the focus of our program and who we are serving. We are gender inclusive, we are pet friendly, and we do house the 24/7 DV hotline. It is the DV SA hotline, but for the purposes of this program, I'm focusing on the DV portions. Services include the items listed below, and these are all available 24/7 at our shelter facility. So we have trained advocates available around the clock. So regardless of when someone is in need of those advocacy supports, and we're able to provide those. These are some stats from the shelter, just to show you how many people we've served and some information on demographics. I just want to highlight that you can see the vast majority of people that we serve are children, along with very low income or extremely low income households. Information about the renovation, if y'all haven't heard or if you weren't aware, the shelter was recently renovated and we love it. It's great. It's a very, very new, very welcoming, very trauma-informed space. This was funded primarily by VHA and City of Vancouver, so big shout out to them and just a huge thank you to their support. This occurred from September 2022 to July 2023, and we moved back in August 2023. This allowed us to increase our capacity from 10 rooms to 14 rooms, serving 33 to 44 people. We can technically go just slightly above 44 because we do utilize portable cribs for very young children, and some of the rooms have enough floor space to allow that in line with our fire plan and fire accessibility and everything like that. So 44 is our fixed capacity. 46 is technically our maximum with some additional portable cribs for young children. The renovation also included increased accessibility, safety, comfort for survivors, like, for example, moving a large bathroom it was like a shared bathroom, so multiple sinks, multiple stalls, so people would be using it at the same time, to all having individual or single-use bathrooms only. They're large enough, they're fully ADA accessible, and they're large enough for parents with their kids to be in there at the same time to assist with bathing or bathrooms use or anything else that a household member might need for assistance. And then just additional trauma-informed spaces to really support survivors and make the space as welcoming and as comforting as possible. These are some photos. So there's one of a bedroom. So there's a single bed and bunks. And then there's the new closet spaces. There's some bright windows with window coverings for privacy as well. And every room it is kind of small, but like I like it. Every room has a chalkboard wall, mostly because we serve a large amount of children, and we do serve the majority of families are participants in shelter. So the chalkboard wall is really fun. It's also used by adult participants too, just like it's a really quick way to make notes, and we just provide chalk, and it's a fun activity, and kids can really safely scribble on the walls, and we don't have to worry about removing marker or anything like that. It's just a fun option for kids and families. And then there's a picture of our dining room, and then we have a picture of our game room or activity room. There's um, a, a door with some windows behind the yellow chairs. That window section actually opens, so the whole thing can be one large play space when we have our activities going on during support groups and services for adults. And that has lots of child activities. Our child activities are all focused on confidence building, self-esteem building, healthy relationships, and really doing some repair for impacts related to domestic violence and the effects on children. We also have a newly added air hockey table in there for our older kids, and that seems to be a big hit. Our media room also has some gaming systems too, so we do have some entertainment for our older kids as well as younger kids. Housing programs in Safe Choice. So we have our rapid rehousing programs. Currently, the county is funding our ARP rapid rehousing program and our Home TBRA rapid rehousing program. These are going very well. We're able to serve a lot of households. This has been a huge impact to supporting survivors and increasing positive exits from shelter. Shelter participants do tend to access the housing programs a little bit more than our general community because our housing programs also include a lethality screening. And generally speaking, some of the folks that are accessing our shelter are still experiencing higher lethality concerns than everyone who is experiencing intimate partner violence. The portion of survivors who are in need of that emergency domestic violence shelter is much smaller than the vast majority of people who are experiencing domestic violence as a whole. But we do also have community members who are participating in our housing programs. It's not just all shelter. Our community office and outreach services does screenings and assessments when we have housing openings as well, and we do take referrals from partners for those housing programs. But it's been a great support. We also have transitional housing programs. Some of these are funded by the county. The vast majority are not funded by the county. We have some that are privately funded, and we have a new program that is federally funded. These have been extremely helpful. We have some shared living transitional housing programs, and then we have some individual apartment style transitional housing programs as well. We are partnering with Second Step Housing, which has been a great partnership and a great help to just allowing some safer spaces for survivors and working with a mission-focused landlord. Our other partner includes Vancouver Housing Authority, great partnership as well, and we really appreciate how mission-driven both of our partners have been. We have motel voucher programs. These were funded in the past by the county. They're currently funded by the City of Vancouver. We are hoping to continue some public funding for motel voucher programs. They're incredibly helpful for survivors, especially survivors in Clark County who are not safe to enter shelter. So for example, if someone lives in the neighborhood that the shelter is located in, and their abuser has been very aggressive with attempts on their life or threats of violence, it is not safe to then bring them into shelter where the abuser might know the location of the shelter. They might run into them at the same grocery store. They might run into them when they're waiting for the bus or just leaving shelter and walking to their car. If the abuser is driving down the street and they're more likely to see them, this can all pose safety risks. So there are some survivors who are from Clark County who are not safe to enter the shelter. And that is something that we discuss with trained advocates during our screening process and our hotline calls. Thankfully, we've had motel voucher programs, and this has allowed us to shelter people away from the shelter in motels some that have been outside of the county due to escalated safety concerns and very aggressive abusers who are very well connected in the community. So, for example, gang members, drug dealers, anyone that is involved with police officers or other persons that hold power within our community, who may be more likely to know where the shelter is located. These programs have been essential in ensuring that people have a safe space. Okay, sorry, I'm getting a time alert from Abby. We can go skip through the next slides. The rest is around a little bit more around housing and legal advocacy. We can go ahead and there's more slides on housing and homelessness in relation to DV, but you'll have these in packets. The last thing that I want to touch on for some of the legal advocacy slides is the partnership with CCVLP and Survivor Support Services has been essential in assisting survivors to rebuild their lives. Clark County does assist with some funding to CCVLP for some of their other programs, and City of Vancouver is also contributing to the Survivor Support Program in partnership with CCVLP. We also contribute some private funds, and then we have some federal funds going into this program. I can't say enough positive things. Please explore this. It has been a huge impact. It is fairly new, and it is doing great work in the community. Definitely something to follow up on. Thank you all for your time. Abby, I know we're at time. Do you want me to ask any questions or need to move on?
We'll hold off on questions. Oh, sorry, Abby, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, people can email me questions and I can forward them to you, but I do think we need to move to the next presentation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for all that really important information. Appreciate all the YWCA does for our community. So thank you. Thanks for being here. We're going to move into Jackie St. Louis, who's going to talk about the review and approval of the Clark County Community Services Strategic Plan. Thank you, Jackie, for being here.
Good morning, and thank you, everyone. Abby, are you able to share the presentation with me?
This is David Poland. Is the presenter speaking because the interpreter can't hear and I can't hear?
Yeah, not yet. Okay, ask you about sharing. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I'm going to share the presentation. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah. Thank you.
Jackie, I have all the slides you sent embedded in our presentation and can advance the slides for you.
Please, could you say that again, Abby? You broke up.
I have all of your slides embedded in our presentation and can advance them for you so everyone can see them.
You let him know his audio is not working.
Also, we can't hear you very well. Your audio seems to be muffled.
Yeah, let me I'm having that issue with my. I'm not sure what's going on with my audio. Let me try turning off video to see if that helps. I don't know what that. Let me know if my video improves. Is this audio any better?
Yes, that is better. Thanks, Jackie.
So good morning, everyone. Really excited to have the opportunity to share with you an update of the strategic planning process, try to bring you up to speed as to where we are, and of course, a very important thing we'll be doing as well is sort of reviewing the strategic plan and the mission statement. But before jumping into that, I wanted to provide folks with a background of the work that we've done to date, to give you a sense as to where we got to, where we currently are. Okay, let's move on to slide number 2. So this is the background of the strategic plan, just to give you a sense of where we are and what this process entails. One, of course, the approach that we took in the strategic planning process was sort of like a mixed method approach, which is multidimensional, and that included surveys, both internal surveys with the staff of the county, but in addition, with what we called providers, but that included not only individuals who were sort of like providing social and human services, but in addition to that, folks in law enforcement, folks in corrections, and just general folks in the community that are actually having touch points with folks who are using the services provided by community services. In addition to that, conducted interviews, what we called leader interviews with community leaders from across the county, desk research, and also engaging young people, individuals that were young people and individuals that were using service recipients as well. The plan, of course, really focused on what folks' perspectives were, what folks' experiences were, but not only that, in addition to that, as well, looking at the hopes and aspirations that individuals had for the services that they would be receiving. There were several key phases, all sort of like working together cohesively to get us to this point of really developing a strategy for moving from what we call the current to the ideal state, so sort of like where we are currently in comparison to the aspirations and hopes that folks had. So we looked at one, understanding where things were currently, really defining what the ideal state was, identifying opportunities, strengths, and gaps, or in some ways looking at a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. In addition to that, identifying the stakeholders, so the groups that were engaged that I just mentioned, identifying who they were, and then proceeding to have conversations with those individuals. And that is the adjacent piece, and then finally, developing measures for how we would track success and progress. So we'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of this presentation. Here are the phases of the strategic planning process, and it sort of like mirrors the previous slide. But we had this sort of like phase one, which was planning, which was review, spanning all the way through to the current phase where we are, which is the synthesizing of themes and the preparation of the strategic plan. Our data collection process. For the process of collecting data, we had several methods by which we did so. Once again, harking back to the mixed methods approach. One was literature review, looking at the literature and data that was out there, conducting research, some primary research, the organizational survey, which was the internal survey that was conducted, the first survey, a provider survey. In addition to that, the interviews, and of course, focus groups, and that included, as I mentioned previously, young people. For the vision, and this vision attempts to capture the sentiments, the perspectives, and the insights that was garnered over the course of the process. And that vision is for a Clark County that is diverse, that is equitable, and that is also resilient. And it reads as such that the vision for Clark County is a vibrant community where every individual and family flourishes in an environment of inclusivity and equal opportunity. So sort of highlighting here the importance of equity, the importance of inclusivity, as well as a community that is all thriving together. In addition to that, the envisioning of a future where diversity is celebrated as a strength, where barriers that divide individuals are being dismantled, and where the bonds of community are being fortified by mutual respect and understanding. So some key themes here being diversity, being resilient, being equity, and thriving. And these themes reflect what we heard from all of the stakeholder groups that we had conversations with, as well as, of course, community services, its work, its mission, its visions as well. This vision hopefully leads to these following things. These once again reflect the aspirations and hopes. Neighborhoods that are pulsating with vitality of cultural diversity. So once again, underscoring the importance of cultural diversity, economic opportunities that are abundant and accessible, and of course, eliminating poverty too as well, really highlighting the importance of economic thriving, the importance of equity, and the importance of programs and systems that move people from situations in which they're economically impoverished to ones in which they're thriving. Looking at education systems, ones that are transformative, equipping individuals with tools for success. And this is really reflective of the conversations we have with young people as it relates to education and the connection between that and the future that they want to see, that they see for themselves. Seeing healthcare as a universal right and not a privilege, and ensuring the well-being of every citizen. So looking at how people thrive not only economically but also from a health and well-being perspective too as well. A very important issue that kept coming up over the course of these conversations, over the course of this process, was the issue of housing and housing affordability. So then seeing housing as that being safe, that being affordable, and of course understanding that outcomes, individual sort of like life and health outcomes are inextricably tied to their ability to have safe and secure housing. And that social services continue to be robust, but also are compassionate, and that they're meeting the needs of the people that most need them. So really prioritizing the needs of people that are accessing and using and are dependent on social services to make advancements in their lives. And also the idea of civic engagement, the importance of engaging communities, and especially those that are most marginalized or historically have not had the opportunity to participate in sort of like civic engagement, or to be able to help determine what services and supports look like for them and their communities. So really emphasizing and prioritizing engaging these communities. And in addition to that, finally, that every person, regardless of one's age, gender, ability, or race, or any part of their identity, that they continue to feel understood and are able to fully participate and be connected to the larger whole. So that sort of as well tying back to the idea of equity, racial equity. And the mission. The mission reads that the Clark County Community Services, the mission is that it will work to empower and uplift the community by providing the essential support, the resources, and the opportunities that are aimed at overcoming poverty and ensuring a stable, healthy, and engaged community for all. That the community services remains dedicated to fostering a culture of empathy, service, and accountability, where the dignity of every individual is upheld, and that the interconnectedness of folks' well-being is recognized. And that also, in addition to that, that through strategic partnerships, that community services remain committed to enhancing economic security and well-being, addressing the root causes of poverty, and building a foundation for a prosperous future. And the highlights here being this idea of service. That service leads to a sense of empowerment, especially for individuals that are most marginalized, folks that have identities that are marginalized, whether it be for economic reasons, whether it be marginalization as it relates to individuals' race, age, gender. And then that also leads to a sense of justice being really important. And of course, that's what we hope to get to, a community that is thriving and that looks like a prosperous community. And the ways in that which is done, of course, through strategic partnerships. One of the things that kept coming up consistently was the idea that social services or human services folks this is a collaborative community, and that is something that needs to continue and continues to need to be built upon. But nonetheless, that if this continues, that we can move to a community where services are reflective of the needs of the folks that most need them and most use them. People feel empowered, especially those that are most marginalized, and if that they are empowered, then they are experiencing a sense of justice, and then as a community, the entire community continues to thrive together. The primary objectives are one, advocating for equity, inclusion, and social justice. That being really important. So once again, going back to this idea of justice, that would include championing policies and initiatives that address the root causes of inequity. So the idea that inequities that exist in our society, a lot of times we may attempt to address the symptoms, but it's important to address the root causes and understand what those are. In addition to that, to promote economic empowerment, to really address the needs of people, the people that are most disenfranchised in the community, the people that are experiencing poverty, or people that are economically challenged or immobile. Once again, to enhance the well-being, health and well-being, the holistic health and well-being of individuals, Then that includes, of course, the behavioral health challenges that folks may be experiencing and facing, and really looking at doing this in a way that is culturally competent to as well. To cultivate an inclusive community, have community engagement, once again, that individuals and community groups that have historically not had an opportunity to be civically engaged or to participate in these processes that determine the courses of their lives, to be very deliberate about engaging these communities, and then to strengthen the support systems, the systems of support systems that currently exist, to continue to enhance and continue to strengthen these systems by delivering high quality, responsive, culturally relevant services and supports that are meeting the evolving needs of Clark County community members. And when we say evolving needs, that is specific to the fact that Clark County is an evolving and increasingly more multicultural community, and that the services and support systems they need to be reflective of those communities. The guiding principles to guide the work, those being integrity, innovation, resilience, compassion, collaboration, service, inclusivity, and equity. And starting with integrity, being committed to processes that really prioritize transparency, honesty, and ethical behavior, holding oneself to a high standard, some trust in the public. Is something that continues to be prioritized, so that the community can have trust in the work that's being done, the services and programs that are being created on the behalf of people that most need us. Innovation is something that's really important too as well. Continuing to innovate, continuing to redesign, continuing to iterate. Things are changing as our communities are changing. That means that our programs, our systems and policies as well need to be changing to reflect those needs. They need to be dynamic, and such they need to be innovative, cutting edge, and really focus on what's happening not only now but into the future too as well. Resilience, fostering a community that is adaptable and robust, adapting to the challenges. I think the COVID-19 pandemic really brought this to the fore, really sort of emphasized the importance of having services and programs and a community in general that is resilient and that is able to withstand challenges, and even when after going through these challenges to be able to bounce back, not only to the state that it was previously, but to be even stronger. So that being important. Also compassion. Compassion has come up pretty frequently in the way that services are provided, in the way that people are supported, communities are supported. The approach needs to be person-centered, it needs to be human-centered, it also needs to be compassionate, right? They're delivered with empathy and an understanding of the human experience. Once again, if we think about from a cultural perspective, it needs to reflect, it needs to be reflective of and informed by the diversity of the culture and experiences that is present in Clark County. Mentioned collaboration, the importance of collaboration, something that has come up consistently as a strength of the community, but to continue having collaboration and to even build new partnerships and collaboration, because by working together, of course, the individuals that are most in need are able to receive the most appropriate support that they're needed when folks are working in these alliances. Service being really important, that at the core, community services, they are public servants, and that they exist to, once again, to serve the community of Clark County in ways that are responsive of and reflective to multicultural and diverse needs, and even during times of challenges as it was done during the pandemic. So to continue to provide service, to continue to embody an attitude of service. Inclusivity, once again, speaking to the importance of equity, racial equity and social justice, but realizing that strength comes from the diversity that is in the community, and that is important, once again, to create a community, to create services, to create supports that foster environments where individuals are able to receive the services and support that they need. And finally, equity, once again, to challenge systems of oppression, the historic systems of oppression that oppress individuals based on their identities, based on who they may be, to continue to challenge those and move us to a community where there's equity and social justice. In terms of strategic priorities and goals, these are the strategic priorities and goals that emerge. They are 5. with one of those equity and inclusion being one that is infused throughout the other four, and those four being economic stability and workforce development, housing affordability and stability, health and well-being, equity and community engagement and collaboration, and ensuring that equity and inclusion is once again infused throughout each one of these strategies. In terms of objectives, these are the objectives specific to these goals, and they are once again things such as increasing access to vocational training, so means by which you can get to this state, increasing access to vocational training and higher education programs. This once again is reflective of some of the things we've heard from our community engagement as it relates to housing affordability and stability, really expanding housing initiatives, including low housing, addressing the affordable housing crisis, health and well-being, increasing access to preventative and primary healthcare services, especially services related to behavioral health, that's substance use and mental health, and of course, community engagement and collaboration, really strengthening communication and collaboration between government agency, nonprofits, and community groups, especially those that historically, once again, have not had an opportunity to participate. In terms of monitoring and evaluation, as I mentioned at the start of the presentation, the development of performance indicators being very important to monitor and track success, data collection, the implementation of systems that can help us collect the data that we can use to be able to evaluate the progress towards goals, or if some iteration needs to happen and some redesign needs to happen too as well. Regular reporting, producing reports, once again, I think that connects with transparency, making those reports available to all stakeholders involved, creating feedback loops, and that ties into the community engagement process, engaging communities, those as well that have not had opportunities to participate historically, really engaging those groups. And then, of course, continuous improvement. If you're monitoring and evaluating appropriately, then you'll be able to assess and then make improvements should that need to happen. In terms of status update and next steps, the final review by the steering committee is happening. There'll be just edits after the steering committee has completed the review process, which is ongoing at this point. And then, of course, the final draft will be submitted. So I want to end here and open up for any questions that folks may have.
Yeah, we have a question from Rob Perkins in the room.
Hey, Jackie, thanks for coming. You talked about education systems being involved in the strategic plan. What form did that take?
Well, could we say that once again? Could you say that, ask that question once again, please?
You talked early on in the slides about that education systems being involved. What form would that take?
So you're asking specific, what form would it take to address education systems?
Yeah, what would that be like?
Yeah, so it's really looking at, it's evaluating, the current systems that are in place, and that is especially as it relates to to young people, and looking at how to create access to individuals to be able to acquire the academic credentials or the trainings that they need to really help improve their lives. And this is really tied to around sort of like economic outcomes. One of the things that we heard is that for individuals who are looking at, what their sort of like, predictions for their lives are, that they want to have more access to, take, for example, college programs or training programs, and sort of like education that is tied to their ability to secure, gainful employment that will afford them to be able to live lives in which they're thriving.
So this would be intentionally considering their pathway through and out of school and into world work.
You're really breaking up.
You can speak a little bit louder.
Okay. This then is about their pathway through and out of school and into the rest of their lives, right?
Exactly. So how they get into the workforce, and really looking at how can my education or my the opportunities that are available to me for education, how do they translate to me leading a successful life? And we heard this a lot from young people, sort of like, looking at a projection, okay, we live in a community where, affordable housing is an issue. We live in a community where you need to make a certain amount of money to be able to live, to be able to live. And so what they're looking to do there is really identify pathways to being able to have gainful employment and to lead successful lives.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, this is David Pullen. Can you hear my voice?
And David, and you're pretty clear.
That's because I'm using an iPad. It's got a good microphone. Very important for people who have microphones. My question, I'm going to build on what Rob Perkins asked about the public schools and what it looked like your engagement to get youth information. I was wondering, have you been talking with the deaf community, and have you talked to the youth and adults that are staff at WSD here to find out what it looks like for them for achieving a thriving life here in Clark County, including possibilities of going to college?
Thank you, David. And the answer to that question is no. Specifically speaking to that group, that was no.
I guess a follow-up question is it something that you wanted to do or that you overlooked, or was it not a part of this project, or how can I help with that if necessary?
Yeah, it is not something that we didn't want to do. We tried to engage as many stakeholder groups as possible. And yeah, assistance to do that, I'm not even sure at this point. I'm thinking I would be open to doing that, David, if you would be interested. We did have, as part of the steering committee, individuals that are, doing work specifically with that community. So the folks that have and who need services specific to or relevant to, disabilities, so intellectual, developmental disabilities, voices are somewhat represented, but not to the degree I think that you're speaking to.
Okay, if you want to, I can email you to follow up on that. How's that sound?
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking today.
Thank you, David.
Are there any additional questions for Jackie? All right, hearing none, thank you so much, Jackie, for this presentation. As Jackie mentioned, the strategic plan is not quite yet finalized, so isn't at a stage for CAAB approval yet. But when it is, I will send out a document to the CAAB for you all to review, and then we will vote to approve it at the May meeting. And I will pass it back to Melanie.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jackie, for that information. I'll pass it back to you, Abby, for an outcomes report for July through December.
All right, thank you, Melanie. So can everyone, yes, that is now on the screen. So here we have the outcomes report for community action programs and homeless crisis response system programs for fiscal year 24 so far. This is quarters 1 and 2. So July 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023. I sent out electronic copies to you all over email, and then I also have physical copies available here in the room. I believe you've all seen previous versions of this report multiple times, but as a reminder, it shows each community action program and homeless crisis response system program and annual report period in orange. And then the green section shows the annual proposed goals, achieved year to date, and the percent achieved. At this point, we're only halfway through the fiscal year, so most of the programs will be around 50% achieved, but some will be higher or lower since programs operate at slightly different paces. And then in blue, you'll see the annual contract amount, the total spent as of December 31st, 2023, and the balance as of December 31st, as well as the percent spent. So some things to note first about the community action programs, first page. First of all, the Clark College Financial Wellness Program ended on January 5th of 2024. So this program is now complete and all remaining funds will be reallocated to other CSBG programs. Secondly, the Community Foundation for Southwest Washington program was renewed for a second year using the CSBG state proviso funds. And then third, you might notice that the Battleground Healthcare Dental Expansion Program increased their proposed goals for fiscal year 2024 to account for a higher demand for services than they originally anticipated when the program began. So if you'll recall from the last report, their percent achieved was well over 100%, and now they're very well on track to meet their targets more accurately.
That's Battleground Healthcare.
Yes, that's Battleground Healthcare. Are there any questions about community action programs before I move to the homeless crisis response system? All right, hearing none. Now we'll move on to the homeless crisis response system programs. These are organized by program category in the same way they have been in the past. We have system, coordination, and data collection, core support services, outreach services, shelter services, et cetera, as you'll see in the gray bars at the top of each section. You will again notice here that most of the programs are around 50% of their achieved goals. For those that are already over 100%, this is likely due to higher demand and or capacity than originally anticipated. We, at this point in the reporting process, don't ask providers to provide an explanation for being outside of their targets. We'll have them provide those explanations at the end of the fiscal year. So I'll have a better understanding of why targets may have been overachieved or underachieved at that time. And there are a few things that I want to highlight about these programs. So first of all, the Council for the Homeless Motel Vouchers and Share Homeless Outreach Programs are currently billing to other grants, which is why you'll see $0 spent to date for these grants. And you also won't see any outcomes achieved yet. Secondly, there are a number of new programs. We received eviction prevention rental assistance program funding. So all of the ones labeled as such began providing services in January of 2024. So those also won't show any outcomes or spending yet in this report, but will be on the next quarterly report. And I just wanted to add those in so you know that we do have those programs up and running in the homeless crisis response system, but they aren't reporting on any numbers on this quarter yet. And then lastly, any remaining state and local funds at the end of the fiscal year will be recaptured and used to supplement the House bill deficit. I know we've talked to you all about this before, but we are currently receiving fewer House bill dollars from document reporting fees than we have in the past and then expected. So any remaining funds will be used to fill that deficit.
House bill dollars?
House bill, yeah.
And those house bill dollars would be for the future year, not our current year. So we 1 year in reserve.
So we are no longer in 1 year in reserve because of the deficit and House bills. So we have had to dip into those reserve funds to stay at status quo through fiscal year 24, which is our current fiscal year through June 30. And we are working with the state to try to get additional funds so that we can move forward with fiscal year 25.
So this is the 23-24 award, correct?
So yes,
Yeah.
we're in fiscal year 24. It's the fiscal year is the year at the end of the year. That's how they identify. So starting June or July 1st, 2023 through June 30, 2024 is fiscal year 24.
And we have funds already secured for that fiscal year, which we made our awards, correct?
For the CSBG funds, yeah, that's correct.
Okay, which is the deep reporting fees where we're seeing the decline in revenue.
That is a different funding source. A lot of our contracts receive funding from both sources. So we are on track with CSBG funding. It's the House bill funding that we're seeing the deficit in.
I guess because I'm just a little confused because I thought when we made our awards, and I understand that our fiscal year and the fiscal year for these grants are different, but I thought that we were making the award based on the amount we already had in the reserve, like we had in the fund.
So yes and no. So keep a reserve, and based on collections, finance kind of projects for the future for when we do the request for application. So based on what we had and what we projected to be receiving over the next 2 years, back in 2022, when we did the request for application, we anticipated receiving $5 to $7 million, and now we're receiving $2. And so there's quite a difference in what we're actually collecting now that we would have been using for fiscal year 25. And so we're now using the reserve to keep all programs whole through fiscal year 24. And then now that the year end is done for the county, we're able to start taking a look at fiscal year 25, which is still part of the last request for application, but making hard decisions on where we're going to prioritize those funds because we saw such a significant reduction in House bill dollars. We're also working with the state to request additional funds through the Consolidated Homeless Grant to help backfill or keep in those dollars to keep us as whole as possible. So it was just an unfortunate significant decrease in collections of House bill dollars over the last year.
So I thank you for that additional description. I think what I would love to see, and I'll reach out outside of the meeting, but to see an actual financial statement of revenue and what the reserve was and where the gap is, just for my own understanding. I know that the collections have declined significantly, like that's not in question, but I just was curious about the fiscal year ending for 2023, knowing exactly how much revenue was collected for the deed recording fee, and then knowing how much we've already committed in contracts. I think what I want to know is.
Yeah, and when we do that financial report also, and our finance staff will be here to be able to really dive into to answer those questions. But if you send us like your specific question, we can make sure that they are prepared and have that information.
Okay.
This is revenue that comes from the document recording fees.
Yes. Yeah.
Does that mean that there's been less transfer of property?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Does anybody know whether that's from official or adult? Is it really
Yeah.
honest?
Oh, yeah.
Is that like car registration things or just?
No, so anytime a person purchases a house, sells a house, transfers a deed, like if I'm gonna put it in a trust and give you my deed, you have to pay document recording fees to the auditor's office. And the state statutes puts a portion of that document recording fee set aside for home services, and then it comes back to all of the counties for use. And there's been a significant decline in real estate transactions because of interest rates. The majority of the recording fee spikes came from refinancing their homes at lower interest rates. So they were collecting the recording fees, but now no one's refinancing and the market's a lot slower. So it is a really big issue for homeless services and the entire system statewide. But I just thought that we were functioning under a reserve policy where we weren't spending the current year collections that we were committing to prior years. So that way we didn't have to cut. So it sounds like we're dipping into our reserve and
Does that change?
in order to cover the deficiencies because it's so significant. That's what I'm hearing, but.
Yes, so your understanding is correct. We typically would keep, up to a year's collections before we would allocate them out. But because this has been going on for a while now with the decline in housing, refinances and home purchases, that we now do not have that reserve. So in our attempts to keep all of the programs whole in what we originally agreed to contract.
Okay. And I don't mind to run this whole presentation, but yeah, I just want to know what the fund balance is and how much we did.
Yeah.
That's the question.
Absolutely, and I'll just jump in. I think everyone is right in what they're saying here.
I think part of it is, in just to clarify the understanding is, we do a 3-year request for application cycle. So when our finance department makes the projection of revenue collection and what the capacity of the system will be, they're projecting 3 years out. So like what we have on hand and the next 3 years. And after the request for applications take place, we enter in 2-year contracts with the service providers with an option to extend the 3rd year, and which we generally do exercise that option and extend unless we have contract problems. And then in that 3rd year, we're doing that next request for applications. So in this case, we are in the 3rd year of our cycle. Our RFAs will be coming out at like this fall for the next cycle. And we've had a couple years now of very low document recording fee revenue collection. So we're actually in better shape than most counties across the state because of the process that we have followed. But this 3rd year, we are absolutely, it is requiring to dip into reserves to get to that endpoint with the new RFA.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, and thanks for your questions, Alicia. I'm going to move us forward so that we can move on to the next presentation, but real quick, this last page of the outcomes report is information pulled in program reports in HMIS. On the top left, we have a chart that shows participant satisfaction survey data. So far this fiscal year, programs have sent out 3,559 surveys, received 595 responses for a 16.7% response rate. And of these responses, 90.1% indicated a positive overall experience. Next, we have community engagement, which shows the number of volunteers and volunteer hours that help operate the programs. This year, there have been a total of 1,279 volunteers with around 15,000 volunteer hours, 3,600 of which were by low-income volunteers for a total value of $491,000. The next chart shows the number of grievances received by programs. So out of the 46 programs which report grievance information, 22% have received a grievance. And there were 56 total grievances received so far, 31 of which have been resolved, and the rest are in the process of being resolved. And staff will keep an eye on these to make sure that they have been resolved. And we're not concerned about the number of grievances at this time, but we do keep an eye on how many grievances are received by each agency and the rate at which those are resolved. Looking at demographic information, not all programs report on every demographic, and you'll see above each chart the number of responses that each demographic receives. So we have charts that show distribution by age, gender, education level, race, and a few other characteristics such as chronically homeless, veteran, or disabled that we track to see who is engaging with the program. And I don't think we have any more time for questions on this at this time, but please feel free to reach out to me over email if you have any follow-up questions. And I will pass this back to Melanie.
Great, thanks, Abby. All right, I saw that Samantha's here to share information about the City of Vancouver Affordable Housing and Homelessness Update. Samantha, welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. A couple updates from the City of Vancouver. Our Affordable Housing Fund applications were open for the month of February. The application period has now closed. We received 25 applications. This was a $32.6 million request overall, and we're looking to award about $9 million. So our review committee will meet this month and we'll have recommendations going forward to City Council at the beginning of April on those. And then we've also, I provided this board updates before about the CDBG and home applications that we received. Our scoring committee has met on, has scored all the applications and met to make recommendations, and we'll be putting those forward as part of our action plan that will be released for public review shortly, and I can definitely share that with you. This year is also the cycle for our 5-year consolidated plan. So our action plan will be part of that larger 5-year plan, and that will also be released for public review by the end of this month. And then lastly, I've been working on a 2023 housing action report. We've been working on our housing action plan here over the last 12 months. And so I'm looking forward to reporting out the outcomes from that work. And that is also by the end of March. So happy spring. And I'll look forward to providing those documents and updates as soon as they're available.
I have a question. This is Alicia. Hi, Sam.
Hi.
My question is, does the city of Vancouver have a spending plan or goals for your affordable housing sales tax revenue?
I think the affordable housing sales tax revenue is more with the CMO, the city manager's office, and the HEART team, because I'm not very aware of that funding source and what its plans are.
Would you be willing to ask the city if they would be willing to give the CAAB an update on the plans for that revenue, since it's a significant source of affordable housing funds?
Yes, I will ask Jamie to provide that update.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
I have a question. This is Amy. How many applications did you say you got? 20 something?
25.
25. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks so much. All right, now we have some task force updates. Amy and Abby. Amy, do you want to go first with the legislative advocacy update?
Yeah, just make sure to speak up. So.
Okay, well, I don't really know exactly what the residential housing bill's about, but it did pass. It's not the one they wanted for the, right, but I know that, let's see, okay, HB 1652, which this isn't about housing, but child support full pass-through went through. So people that are on receiving TANF now will get their child support instead of having to sign it over to the state, which that's what they've had to do before. And the Nothing About Us Without Us Act passed too. Then David knows about that one. Wants to tell you about that. So I know. Not really when that went through that I.
You know the number of the.
Yes, it is HB 1541. This is also good. We're the 11th state now that no longer we have eliminated child marriage. We're the only 11 states, so there's still 38 states out here that still, not just 17, they're like 14. So, and that is HB 1455. That's, yeah, it was a short session.
And then one other mention with the legislature, if you hadn't heard, the efforts to pass some sort of rent control or rent caps in Washington failed to pass through. It is very likely that that will be picked up again next session and a slightly revised bill, something that might be able to go to the legislature.
And the one that just passed about the residential housing is HB 2071. I was trying to read about it, but.
Yeah, it passed the House, but it did not pass in its state. Yeah.
2071? I heard you're talking about what, the 2114, I think it was, yeah. And that, yeah, Cleveland one.
Well, thank you, Amy. Were there any other questions about legislative advocacy?
This is David Poland. I wanted to say that I did try to write in for HB 2114 residential tenants that would have improved the stability for tenants by limiting how much they could increase things like fees, all these different fees. And so the result was that it didn't get moved past the Ways and Means of the Senate, but it looks like it's potentially something that could pass next year, just depending on it being resubmitted and getting through Ways and Means, which is kind of hard to do. Just so people know in the public, that's a budget thing. And so they really have to discuss and have to pull it out and decide they want to discuss it. So we'll see what happens with that. Yeah, anybody that wants to contact David Poland about the Nothing About Us Without Us Act, took 4 years to pass, and it's going to help a lot of people.
Thank you, David. Go ahead, Rob.
Do any of these bills that didn't pass stand a chance in getting proviso in the budget, do you think?
Well, I think, I know that the child support will pass through the next substitute on there, for it's not gonna go through till 26 because of the budget, but
Well, we sometimes see funding measures for bills and the bills come to life for 1 year budget.
Isn't last year the budget year though? This is
The long one?
It's the HR section.
They've added provisos.
No.
question, so wait,
I didn't imagine that there were.
you might know this, Felicia, if a bill goes in, it went in last year, so it goes, carries over to this year. Okay, so now say somebody, can they put one in this year and it carries over to next year? No, so it's only the long session.
Sessions, but they will be resubmitted.
All right, thank you all. Moving to community needs assessment task force updates. The community forums were completed at the end of January, and Jackie has put together a great draft of the CNA report, which staff are working to review and finalize. And I will send that draft to the CNA task force by the end of this week for review and approval at the CNA task force meeting next Thursday, March 14th. And then all the components will be sent to communications for assembly, and the final report will be presented to the CAAB for approval at our May 1st meeting. And we'll try to get that report to you all at least a week before that meeting, so you have time to review it. And then I also wanted to have a conversation about task force appointments in general. I know there's been some confusion about the responsibilities of task forces, who's currently serving on the Legislative Advocacy Task Force. So I sent out over email to you all and also have printed copies of task force descriptions for your review. Since the CNA task force work is almost complete, we won't be recruiting new members for that task force until next year. But I would like to recruit some new members for the Legislative Advocacy Task Force and just encourage re-engagement with this work. So if you'd like to join this task force or continue serving on the task force, please send me and Amy an email and we will get you involved with that. And then also, since the CNA task force is ending, we're initiating a new task force, which will be called the Policy Task Force. Basically, it's come to our attention of Clark County staff and the CAAB Executive Board that some of the CAAB bylaws and policies are just a bit outdated and in need of some updates. So to ensure CAAB member involvement in these revisions, we're recruiting members for a policy task force. And the description of this task force was sent out, but to summarize, responsibilities will include reviewing CAAB bylaws and policies, and then providing recommendations for revisions as needed. So again, please email me if you're interested in serving on this task force. I anticipate that will start off by meeting once a month outside of regular CAAB meetings until no longer needed. Any questions about that? All right, hearing none, I will open up for public forum.
I think it's Chair Melanie opens public forum and closes public forum. There's no one here from the public to testify, Melanie. I don't know if there's
Okay.
anyone online.
All right, doesn't sound like there's anyone here to speak, so we will close that. And other business is at you, Abby, to review.
Yeah, so first of all, I just wanted to follow up on a conversation that we had at the January meeting about meeting cadence. I know some folks were hoping to have a bigger conversation about how often we meet and what times we meet. Since this year has already started and we have all of the meetings scheduled, I met with the executive team and we decided that we think it makes more sense just to wait until the end of the year and then have a conversation at the November meeting where we can kind of reestablish meeting cadence and see what will best serve the needs for the 2025 calendar year. And then I also just wanted to touch base about the equity training. I'm so sorry that we had to reschedule again. I really appreciate all of your flexibility with this training being moved around so much. And yeah, just accommodating these unforeseen circumstances with our trainer. I will be sending out a doodle poll to reschedule this training as soon as I hear back from the trainer about its availability. We are still definitely planning to have this training. It just might have to be pushed back further than we wanted, but we will be having it hopefully in the next few months. Any questions?
You said a meeting on March 14th? Is that a Sunday?
Oh, the CNA task force meeting is next Thursday.
I thought they canceled those though.
I canceled the one for last month just because we didn't have anything to discuss, but we will still have the meeting next week.
All right, thank you for that information. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We will see you at our next meeting on Wednesday, May 1st. Have a great rest of your day.
Is Jackie on there?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Jack's still on there? Is Jackie on there still?